Also, the coolest things just happened. I've just come back from my walk with this one who's getting quite big to pick up now. And right next to the shed, right in the back of our house, in our very own backyard, I found some slippery jack mushrooms. I was hoping that there'd be slippery jack mushrooms here because right behind me there's 3 big pine trees and they love pine needles. So this is super exciting. We've got mushrooms in our very own backyard. This is like our first wild forage, I guess. So yeah, I'm gonna go pick some. Try not to step on any. If you've never seen slippery jacks before, they've got like a sticky top, brown top, and then they've got yellow spongy underside, like that. And they like growing in pine needles. And they're introduced here in Australia. They're not native to Australia. They're a European mushroom. So that's not bad. I just walked around our backyard and picked them straight out of the lawn. I actually haven't seen them anywhere else on my walk. So what a nice surprise to just see them in our very own backyard. One of them's been attacked by, I don't know what that is, but it's got some good holes in it. So there's some other creatures that like them too. So you just saw me cleaning up those slippery jack mushrooms, just peeling back that spongy gill layer and then peeling the skin on the other side. The stuff that we're not using, the gills and the skin, I'm going to see if the chickens will be interested in it. They may or may not be. Actually, some of the edible stuff for us came off with the gills, so maybe they'll pick that off. We'll see. I think they're quite hungry. We've been feeding them a lot of food scraps lately and not much grain, so if they don't go for this, I'm going to feed them grain anyway. Tuk, 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 tuk. See if they like it. No takers? I've normally got much better scraps, don't I? Like fermented dairy or meat scraps. Or vegetables at least, not mushrooms. I'm going to poach some eggs. I always put a little bit of vinegar in there just to keep the egg whites together a bit. Put a healthy knob of butter in there for the mushrooms. Oh, that's bubbling on. Crack them in, I think. Last time I collected them in Tassie, they were a bit wet. These are a bit drier, which is good. So the trick for poaching eggs I found is to give it a stir, put a little bit of vinegar in that you saw me do earlier, and then just crack the egg as close as you can to the water. I mean, this is the fastest way. I'm going to do 2. And they normally take about 2 minutes to cook.
To the pan juices, I added some water and a teaspoon of smoked honey, and then I reduced the liquid by half.
I'm going to turn it off now and plate up. Okay, so I thought that was recording while I was plating up, but it wasn't. But this is a late breakfast. Liver, poached egg, and those slippery jack mushrooms fried in butter. Everything's fried in butter, and then there's a little bit of a smoked honey gravy. I'm going to tuck in.
It's good. Where's the mushroom?
They're on top.
Oh.
They go quite small. They're a garnish, really. Oh, it's such a mess on our table. I'm doing work, see. next to the fire. You reckon it's good?
It is good.
And I put a poached egg on
It's
top
going to get
too.
messy when I get into that egg.
Our neighbours next door, we went round for a drink with them last week, and they mentioned that they had tons of olives. They've been trying to make olive oil out of them, but it was a very time-consuming process, and they're only getting like a few hundred mil for kilos of olives, kilos and kilos of olives. So they've offloaded some on us, which is just amazing because we're just gonna eat some olives brined up. But it's a bit of a process to get them edible because straight off the tree, they taste disgusting, like bitter. Oh, it's awful. It's really, really horrible flavour. So you've got to soak them in water to try and draw all those bitter juices out. I think it's going to take 7 to 10 days. We'll see how we go. But first things first, I'm going to tip all of the olives into this big white bucket. So like, I'm getting rid of any of these that look really bruised or rotten. And old ones like that. And some of these might be from 2 different trees. I don't know. Like there's dark ones and there's also green olives. So we'll see how they turn out. Yeah, so there's a few rotten ones in there, just picking them out. I'm going to miss some, but hopefully you'll see them later or they'll float. Actually, that's pretty cool. All the leaf and stuff's coming to the surface. And some of the rotten ones are floating as well. So, I have a big cabbage here. It's actually been sitting on the bench for 4 weeks. I've been meaning to make sauerkraut for 4 weeks and it just hasn't happened. Cabbage keeps remarkably well if you can keep it somewhere cool. On the bench in the corner of our kitchen, it's quite cool. You can see it hasn't really gone bad, but on the stem here, on the cabbage, it's a bit mouldy. I've been leaf peeling it a bit and used a few leaves for salads and various things. I'm kind of breaking the rules using an old cabbage for sauerkraut because you want the leaves to have as much moisture in them. When the salt draws out the moisture, you need a brine, you need a solution for the cabbage to ferment in. So I'm not sure if it's going to work. I'm hoping it'll work. We'll just have to see how we go. Yeah, I just want to make sauerkraut. I love sauerkraut. And if you're not making sauerkraut yet, you should because it's really easy. You only need 2 ingredients, cabbage and salt. But I do add a third thing into mine. It's a little bit of a twist and that might interest you too.
It's important to remove the thick core from the centre of the cabbage before you begin chopping.
I just slice this as thin as I can. If you have a mandolin, then that's great, but I don't. So I'm just going like this.
With the cabbage chopped, it was time to add salt. The correct amount of salt is roughly 2% of the weight of your cabbage.
It is.
So with 1.5 kilos of chopped cabbage here, I added 30 grams of salt.
It already smells like really nice, like spicy. It's a good cabbage.
You want to keep squeezing the cabbage like this until the mix is reduced to half its size and you can see a nice briny liquid in the bottom of the bowl.
So for this second bowl, I used a little bit of Reuben salt from Utah, I think. But the other salt was salt that we harvested, well actually that our friends harvested for us when we were sailing in the Montebello Islands last year. So that was, there's no radioactivity in it. We ran the garden counter over it for those of you that are saying, you can't eat it, it's radioactive. It's fine. So I suppose you're wondering what my secret ingredient is that I add to my sauerkraut. The third and final ingredient is seaweed, and I've got some kelp seaweed here. That's just been soaking in some hot water. It's Japanese kombu, but I have used kelp that I've harvested from the ocean before, and that works really great. Cabbage has a thing called goitrogens in it, and because I have quite a lazy thyroid, it's sort of important for me to limit goitrogens in my diet because they do actually dumb down thyroid function as well. So I like to add seaweed to my sauerkraut to kind of counterbalance that, because seaweed is very, very iodine rich. It's one of the largest natural sources of iodine. Iodine stimulates thyroid function. So by doing this, I kind of hopefully counteract that goitrogen effect from cabbage. I try not to eat too much cabbage in my diet, but I love sauerkraut and I think fermented foods are really valuable for health. So I like to make it, but put this seaweed in it just to add a little bit of iodine. And I don't know if that's how you pronounce them, so if there's any nutritionists or people that know this out how to spell that word, please let me know. Goitrogens. This is how it looked before I soaked it in hot water, and so it's sort of doubled in size and it's a slimier, soft texture, not a hard leathery texture anymore. Yeah, I might give these last bits to the chickens. It's probably really good for them. I'll just make these a bit smaller. Yeah, so I just add it into here and mix it through. We'll have to harvest some more kelp this winter, I think, because I really like adding kelp to food. I mean, you get that iodine, which is great for thyroid function, but it's also a taste of the sea, and we're not eating as much seafood anymore, so it's nice to have a little sea flavours in there, in the food we eat on land.
Adding boiling water to the jars sterilises them before use.
Okay, I've packed the kraut into these 3 jars. Now the next step is these washed cabbage leaves. I'm just going to use these to press them down to make the sauerkraut stay in its liquid.
It is also important when you are filling your jars with sauerkraut to make sure that you leave a couple of inches above the top of the jar in order to place your washed cabbage leaves and a Ziploc bag full of water to press down on the contents and keep them submerged in the brine.
You just do it until it's pressed down and then you seal it up. Really don't want the water getting into the cabbage mixture, so just be careful. These sauerkrauts, they'll start to bubble over the next few days, and that means that the fermentation has started, and that's why you put the plastic bag and the leaf in. You want to keep the brine, even though it's bubbling up, you want to keep the contents, the cabbage that you've cut up, in that brine, otherwise it's not going to ferment properly. So we're pretty excited to grow some things this coming spring. In particular, we'd really like to grow a lot of heirloom squash or pumpkin. And all around this area, there's been lots of little roadside stalls popping up, and also our neighbours have been growing pumpkins. So we've been able to pick up some interesting varieties of pumpkins. In particular, we found this one, which is called a gallo d'Essine, or a peanut pumpkin. It's supposed to be quite sweet flesh. These are sugar deposits on the outside of the skin, which indicate that the inside is quite sweet. So I'm looking forward to growing this one, and I'm going to save the seeds from this, and then we're going to roast the flesh of this and make delicious pumpkin soup for dinner tonight. So this is really exciting. We're able to get local produce and then save the seeds and then have a go at growing it ourselves this spring for our own autumn harvest. So I've already actually seed saved 3 different varieties here. Queensland Blue from our neighbours, a butternut pumpkin from a roadside stall, and a Turk's Turban pumpkin, which actually doesn't have a very nice flavour, but is an amazing shape and really decorative. We've also got a spaghetti squash here, and these 2 pumpkins, which I actually don't remember what they're called. So if any of you can tell me what these pumpkins are in the comments section, I'd be really grateful so I can label them right when I seed save these in a few weeks' time. I'll just seed save this other one today. There we go. Oh yeah, and there's some good seeds in there. It smells wonderful. Put the seeds in here. I'm going to wash them in some fresh water and get all that pulp off. So I've washed through and picked off most of the flesh, and then just chosen like the plumpest, best looking seeds to seed save. Oh, and there's one that I probably chopped in half when I was cutting into the pumpkin. The next step is to put it out on some baking paper on a tray and just have it dry for 3 or 4 weeks, just so the seeds dry out and they won't go mouldy or anything when we keep them in their seed packet. I'm just going to spread them out. Some of them have a little bit of pulp on them,
still. But I think that'll be fine. That'll just dry out and I'll be able to peel it off before we put them away for storage. So yeah, I'll just spread them out like this and then I'm just going to place them on the shelf above the fire. Chopping the pumpkins and arranging them on baking trays, I added some good lugs of olive oil and plenty of salt before popping them into a 200 degrees Celsius or 400 degrees Fahrenheit oven.
So I've got the dogs here. We're looking after a couple of extra dogs at the moment. And we've got the pig scraps right here. Look, I just found a dog bone. We can give that to the pigs. Pigs like bones too. Anyway, let's go see if they want the scraps. Well, they've pretty much eaten all of that. I like the pumpkin. You can see Troy's erected a little shelter for them because they don't have much shelter in this paddock. They really like it. They sleep under there every night.
I just pulled the pumpkin out of the oven. It's not as sweet as butternut squash or Queensland blue, but it's still got a nice flavour. I think I'm going to put the pumpkin in, use that beautiful stock, add a bit more salt and then maybe some honey or some maple syrup just to add that little bit of sweetness and maybe some cinnamon or something like that, and I think it'll be a yummy soup. This is beautiful chicken stock right here. It's jelly, look at that. And then this is still quite frozen. Use a knife to cut a bit off. Yes! Perfect. So I'm just going to add a clove of smoked garlic. It's already cooked a little, that our friends Jacob and Heidi gave us quite a while back actually, and I've just been adding it every now and again just to add a little bit of interesting flavour to our food. Well, it's perfect for things like this, really good for aiolis as well. And the first thing I saw to open the pantry was some smoked honey. So we're having smoked garlic and smoked honey in this soup. It's going to have smoky flavours. We'll just do a teaspoon because it's quite strong, this honey. Here's my nutmeg. So I'm just going to put some more local honey in. A tablespoon of this one. There we go, that should bring up the sweetness. It's yummy.
My sauerkraut is ready. It's been a week. It's been pretty active. You can see there's like liquid in this because I always put the jars inside a container like this because the liquid bubbles up and over through past that plastic bag that we were using to keep it damp down in the liquid and foams up. There's normally enough liquid for me to just press all the contents of the sauerkraut back down with a wooden spoon so it still stays submerged in liquid. But I'm going to put it in the fridge now. But it will sour up a little bit more in the fridge. It still stays alive, so that's great. So yeah, I'm going to put the big jar in the fridge. We've already tucked into a little bit of this jar. Yeah, and it's good. So super simple, really good for you, and a really delicious thing to do with cabbage. So I mentioned earlier these slippery jacks, it looked like something had eaten them, those holes in them. They're actually prone to getting eaten by slugs. Slugs really love these, so whenever I find a fresh patch, yeah, I'm pretty excited if the slugs haven't found them first. So you can see on this one it's got quite a bit of slug damage and it's a bit soggy, so I don't even know if it's worthwhile keeping, but I just picked it to show you guys. I didn't really realise it had been attacked by the slugs so bad until I picked it. So you can see there's a slug in there. It's only little, but it has eaten out like all of that stem in there. Oh, I just flicked it off. So I've been collecting mushrooms now for about 4 or 5 weeks. So I've been finding them nearly every time I go for a walk. I find a couple, and I've just been putting them up on top of this shelf here above the fire, which is behind me. You can see the flue, and they've been drying out really nicely because a friend of mine said that that's how she eats them. And I did some more reading about these mushrooms, and they're actually related to cep mushrooms or porcini mushrooms in Europe.
And those mushrooms are really famous for being dried out and used in risottos and soups and pastas and things like that. So I'm looking forward to trying out these dried mushrooms. I've already got a stash here. I've been letting them dry out a little bit before I remove the skin and gills. I find it's a lot easier. So I just sort of stand here of an evening and prep them. So for the slightly larger mushrooms like this one, I've been removing the gills and the skin. And then for the smaller ones, there isn't actually very prominent gills on them. Actually, they're not really gills. They're like a spongy, I'm not sure exactly what it's called. That's how it's easy to tell these mushrooms that they're a bolete mushroom. Because they don't have those gills. They have that spongy underlayer and the slimy, slippery surface on top. So I've just been removing that spongy underlayer on these. I don't think it's very easy to digest, whereas this bit is easier for us to digest. For the smaller ones, I actually haven't bothered with it. I've just been taking off the skin where I can. And that seems to be enough. Okay, olives. I've been rinsing these for the last 10 days in just changing the fresh water. I actually forgot to do it for about 5 days. And so today I was just rinsing them out, and there was a tiny bit of scum that was on the top. They don't taste as bitter anymore. Like, you can actually bite into them now, and they don't taste as bad. So I'm going to move on to putting them in brine now. I've made a brine solution. It's 10 parts water to 1 part salt. So 5 litres of water and 500 grams of salt is in there. I just heated it up slightly this afternoon so that all the salt dissolved and it mixed into the water. So I'm just going to drain the fresh water off these olives and pour the salt mixture over it, and they should brine over the next week or so. I'll just keep checking them. I might have to rebrine them again. I've never done this before, so we're just experimenting. Yeah, so when I took the lid off them and they had been sitting here for probably 5 days without me changing the water. You're supposed to change the water every day. There was a few floaty ones and a bit of scum, so I just got rid of those ones. They've gone into the pig bucket. And I'm just going to pour these out and put the salt water over them and just let them brine for, I think, a week. I don't really know. These are green olives, and I think it takes a bit longer for green olives to be less bitter. So we're just going to have to taste them as they go. And once they don't taste bitter anymore, then we can add all the flavourings to them and actually put them away in jars. Putting the salt water into the olives. Now they're all covered. I'm going to put the lid on. I've actually got a whole nother tub to do, so it's good for entertaining. We love olives, so.
We love entertaining.
Hopefully, well, I mean, we're going to have olives for a while if they taste any good. I don't know if they're going to taste good. But they were going to waste, so might as well try and make something out of them. Okay, brine going in. This is 10 to 1. 10 parts water, 1 part salt. Hopefully I have enough. Oh, I think we just made it. You can press them down with a plate, so I'm not doing it actually. Is it going to fit?
No.
Yes. Perfect.
Perfect. Amazing.
It's so good. So this is just to keep them in the salt water. Just put that on there.
Amazing.
Yeah. We'll see how they go. My friend makes olives a lot, and he said that people often go wrong. They don't taste them as they're going. So you need to taste them at each stage and just see, once that bitterness is gone, then you're ready to jar them up with the different flavourings with vinegar and things like that. But you need to just keep them in a salted brine until they're ready.
I think that's what Clayton was also saying, is like they follow a recipe, and the recipe says it should be ready in like 5 days, for instance, some arbitrary number. And then it hasn't worked out. Instead of just continuing to rinse them, they get discouraged and throw it away. Yeah, well, the thing is, like, there's no olive tree is kind of the same. So the fruit are all different. So there'll be different stages of ripeness and bitterness. So there's actually no set time frame for brining them. Yeah, you just have to keep tasting them. And if they're not bitter anymore, then they're good to eat. While Pascale's been making olives, I've been getting messages from my sister. So we're going to go meet some people tomorrow that have a farm, and they have apples laying around on the ground, and they would be very happy for us to come and clean it up for them. They've got some apples and they've got some old hay. So we are going to go make for some happy piggies tomorrow. I'm pretty excited about it. It's our first lot of free food for them. This is
a very, very small portion of what we collected today at the orchard for us, and most importantly for the pigs. I think we have hundreds of kilos in our trailer in the shed right now. But we've run out of time this week, so we're going to take you with us next week, among other things on the homestead. If you enjoyed the video, thanks for giving it a thumbs up. If you're new here, welcome, and please subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time.